Good morning, gardening friends. It's about 8 o'clock, Saturday, October 8th, and I'm about ready to take a walk around my garden. I just finished watering the front yard. We still haven't had much rain. Actually, we've had no rain, none predicted till next week. I wasn't planning on starting the video here, but my little friend has come back. I don't know how he gets through to the backyard, but somehow he does. And somehow he's managed to live not getting run over on this busy corner street. But I'll just let him get about his business, or go about his business. Not much has been happening here. I have noticed while I was watering this morning that the tea olives that I have in the back are blooming. I have 4 of them here. This is a close-up of the flowers. They're very inconspicuous flowers, but they have, there's a real cluster of them up in there. They have I guess the only way to put it would be a cloyingly sweet smell. It's kind of smells like a ligustrum. I don't know if they're related to ligustrums or not, but those little flowers can be smelled from the corner of my house, by my car. I mean, that's how strong they are. So I'm not going to stay here too long, needless to say. Not much else is happening in the front right now. I notice my loquats have a lot of flower buds, but they're not yet opened. Really, the main thing I've been doing this week is just watering every day to try and keep everything alive. Oh, there goes the tortoise into wherever he's going to go. I'm often tempted to put him somewhere, but I figure he's been around here long enough that he knows his way, so I don't mess with him. Oh, my okra harvest is in. People don't usually talk about their failures. I guess I would consider this one of my failures. But let's count my okra crop. 1. That's it. I planted a few seeds of okra in this front bed. I just put like 4 or 5 in a clump, and only 1 came up, and only 1 okra pod actually made it. I think it's probably ripe. But not everything I plant comes up and is productive. I don't know as if I'd try okra again, but I still have half a packet of seeds, so I probably will use it up. Fortunately, I don't really like okra. The only way I like to have okra is with stewed tomatoes. So that's probably a year's supply of okra for me. So actually, it was a successful harvest, in my opinion. Let's see, we have planted Snapdragons in the place of where the string beans were. And they're beautiful. I always pick a dark red. Those are the ones you may recall a few weeks back. I got a flat of them. I'm waiting for these to bloom a little bit more, and then what I'm going to do is cut them back so that they'll bush out. And I know it sounds kind of harsh because you're buying them for the flowers, but realize that these will probably be here through next May. And so I want them to bush out. I don't want them to get really tall and spindly where I have to stake them. But I thought what I would do is let them bloom a little more and cut them, bring them in the house as cut flowers and enjoy them that way. And then let the plants bush out. One other thing I thought I'd talk about is this little area between me and the street. There's one oak tree left, and these are some of the mistakes that I made through the years. When I first bought my house, there was a grouping of trees here, bushes, shrubs. It was really just kind of a wild area. And 30 years ago when I bought the house, it's like, well, I want to make this garden mine. So I cut all that out and have spent the last 30 years trying to repopulate it, because it turns out it's a nice sound barrier between me and a busy street. So you kind of need to think a little bit when you buy a new property as to what you want to keep and what you don't want to keep. And unfortunately, this oak tree, I wish, is something I didn't keep. It's a water oak. At one time this water oak had 3 big sisters that used to protect it. And when I first bought the property, I could put my fingers around the diameter of that oak tree. Needless to say, it's gotten tall. It's healthy, but I worry about it during hurricanes that it's going to blow down on the house. I was going to get it removed when I got my other trees removed, because winds had straight line winds blew them down. And we had an argument with the city. The city claims that that tree is theirs, and if I cut it down, there's a fine. And when their arborist came out to look at it, he said, "Oh, it's a healthy tree." And I said, "Yeah, how would you like to live under that tree during hurricanes?" And he didn't say anything. So it is beautiful. It gives me some shade, but I worry about it a little bit during hurricanes. But you're always going to have to worry about something. Not much else going on around here. My tree fern. For some reason, the leaves on the tree fern have gotten burned. I think it was maybe the really hot weather we had, or possibly I let it get a little too dry. I don't know. This is the first year I've tried growing this fern here. I do water it now about every other day. I did find out I'm allergic to it, so if I brush against it, I itch. Don't really break out into a rash, but I itch. I did plant some new mums here. This is the time of mums. In fact, I'm going to go today. My local nursery gets a shipment of mums in precisely an hour from now. So I can't wait to go and get some mums there. I look forward to mum season. I hear them badmouthed a lot on YouTube, but mums to me signify the fall, and at least in a zone 8B garden, they will stay green year-round. So when the flowers bloom, I cut them off and you have a nice green mound there, which will usually rebloom again within about a month after these blooms fade, and then it'll just sit as a green plant for quite a few months and then repeat the process. In fact, there were other mums there. I hate to say it, but they were fixing to bloom that I had planted from last year, and they just looked terrible. I don't know what it was, but it looked like something had stepped on them, and I tried tying them up and it just didn't work. So I figured, buy some new mums, $6, it's not the end of the world, and try and maybe take better care of them this year to keep them nicely shaped. This topiary has done well. Ivy. This one I replanted this year, so this is a year's worth of growth. It's in a slightly sunnier spot. And this one I replanted this year, which is in a slightly shadier spot. And this one looks absolutely terrible. That one looks minimally okay. And that one looks fantastic. So I'm going to keep at it, and hopefully one day the good thing about ivy is it's not going to die back. So once when it fills the topiary form, it'll stay. This palm looks the worst for wear. That was the one that I dug up in the backyard to make a spot for my ladyfinger palm, or lady palm. This was in too deep of a shade. And of course, now that I brought it out to, this gets western sun on this side of the house, it's kind of shocked it and burned it a little. This, by the way, is why you don't plant a rose of Sharon over a sidewalk. Beautiful tree of my neighbor's, and when it blooms, the blooms fall off on a daily basis. But that's part of nature, to see leaves come down. Back here, there's not an awful lot new this week. My peach angel's trumpet still blooming. Now these snapdragons, the British call them antirrhinums. I like antirrhinum, actually. It sounds like should be uncle something associated with an antirrhinum. But these were from last year, so they've survived the heat of the summer. You notice I tend to get the same colors. When I garden, I think I told you last week, I kind of lose myself in the garden because I'm present when I'm here. But different things trigger different memories. This is really a garden of memories because my grandmother on my mother's side used to love the color red, and she planted red snapdragons. There's not a lot. I grew up in upstate New York. There's not a lot that I can grow in this Zone 8B garden that I could actually take from New York. So what I do is I have certain plants that remind me of people or bring back pleasant memories. Here you can see actually you can see two things. You can see the beautiful plumbago and the nasty, terrible, yuck, icky vine plant that I don't know what it is, but it grows all over. And if you ever let it seed, that one little flower will form a gazillion plantlets, and they'll clamor up everything. It's coming over from my neighbor's property. When I used to go away for the summers, I would go up to New York State where I would garden. It was where I grew up. And when I would come back, this garden would be overrun with those vines. So I am gradually pulling them out. And if you don't let them flower, you can actually get ahead of things. I'm still having blossoms on my ginger lilies, butterfly gingers. It's gotten really tall now. Mexican heather is still doing okay. Not a spectacular plant, but it's green and it's got some flowers there. I'm about ready to work over the pots that are here. Let's see. Oh, one other thing I wanted to mention. Where the angel's trumpet and this palm tree are planted is a spot where at one time I had planted golden bamboo. And golden bamboo is not something that you want to plant in a Zone B garden. If someone tries to sell you golden bamboo, they hate your guts. Because what happened was I planted a golden bamboo right where this palm is 30 years ago, and it didn't really ever like this spot. However, it sent out runners, and it sent out runners in every direction. They ran under my house and came up at the street. They ran under the deck and came up where the banana trees are. They ran into my neighbor's yard. The sidewalk wasn't here back then, but they ran into my neighbor's yard. And so I never really enjoyed the golden bamboo plant because I had read that, oh, plant bamboo in your garden, the breezes blowing through the leaves will sound so nice. And it's like, hell no. So in any event, I cut the bamboo out, and it is very difficult to kill bamboo, especially golden bamboo. And I found something on YouTube, and it's the only way to kill it. If you have bamboo in your garden and you want to get rid of it, listen up. I know for a fact this works. What you need to do is you need to get you some Roundup, the strongest concentration of Roundup that you can get, and get it in a spritz bottle. And what you need to do, I didn't even dilute it. I took it straight out of the bottle. But what you have to do between the segments of bamboo, you know how bamboo has little segments, probably about 4 to 6 inches apart. You cut in the middle of one of those segments, and what bamboo does is it immediately sucks all of the fluids down to the node below to protect itself. So what you need to do is you need to cut it, and within 10 seconds, I'm not kidding, within 10 seconds, you need to dose the top of the cut bamboo with your weed killer, and that's the only way it sucks it past that notch, and it will kill to the root. So that is one successful way of getting rid of bamboo. And even doing that, it took about 2 years to eradicate it, because you have to, if you kill that particular stem of bamboo that you spray, but there'll be other stems around, realizing that it grew like 100 feet apart. Oh, Miss Mimi wants to go out. So that was a mistake I made. Don't ever plant golden bamboo unless you put it in a pot. I, needless to say, bought some pots this week. Miss Mimi likes coming out this time of the day. It's very cool right now. It's definitely a beautiful fall day. And what I'm going to do is, I got inspired by a YouTube program, Gulf Coast Butterfly Garden, and she has a bunch of plants in pots that attracts butterflies. So she got me thinking about putting some flowers in pots. I don't have a lot of flowers in this garden, primarily because I used to go away for the summers. So it's primarily a fall-winter garden and not so much a summer garden. So in any event, I got these pots. The big ones I'm going to transplant the papyrus into. And I've been fighting moisture problems with my papyrus every day. It dries out because it is a small pot. So I bought these larger cabo pots. And then what I did is I sealed the holes of them up. I used an adhesive caulk. Couldn't think of what to put over the hole. And then I remembered I had this cheap pillbox I got from Walmart. So I split it in half and put half of it there and half in the other pot. And then I went ahead and sealed around underneath. So they're ready to be potted up today, which you can learn with me on this rather than from me. I don't know whether this is a mistake or not. You can overthink things. But now what I've done, of course, this is going to hold water, and we're approaching winter. And if you've got a pot full of water that's made out of clay that's breakable, it's possible those pots might not survive the winter, but I'll let you know. I bought a flat of pansies yesterday, actually Johnny Jump Ups. They remind me of my grandmother and my mother's mother. And one thing I found about pansies, actually a couple things I found out about pansies, especially Johnny Jump Ups, is they have a fragrance, but they're so low to the ground that you don't usually smell it, so, or notice it. So what I'd like to do is I like to put them in hanging pots, and I'll put them on that other little deck at the garage. And that way, as you walk by, I do laundry in the garage. That's where my washer and dryer is. So at least as I walk by, you get a whiff of the Johnny Jump Up. And I'm also going to plant those in this strawberry pot, because the Johnny Jump Ups, like the antirrhinums, are pretty much winter hardy here. Are winter hardy here, not pretty much. I've seen Johnny Jump Ups freeze solid and not affect them at all. But they will last through the winter until the heat of next year comes and kills them. This fell out of my tree. And I thought, well, let me keep it alive till Christmas. It's a chunk of mistletoe. And I thought maybe if I stuck it in that pot, which was kind of scraggly looking anyway, and dip it into the damp soil, that it might possibly live. I don't think it will, but I've got nothing to lose. It was a gift from God laying on actually on my car. It had fallen out of the tree. This I got because that reminds me of up north. I used to have mulberry trees in the garden there. I had about 4 acres, and it was the property I grew up on. It had my grandmother's house and my mother's house. And when I first retired 30 years ago, no, 17 years ago, I would go up to the north and into New York for the summers. And so I started gardening again up there and had some nice gardens. But due to health conditions, Mimi sees something that's scaring her. Oscar's back here somewhere. What was I talking about? Due to my health condition, I couldn't travel back and forth to New York like I used to, so I wound up selling the property. So that was kind of gut-wrenching if you're a gardener, to have a garden that you've nurtured that had plants from your parents and grandparents. And basically I grew up with it for 60 years, to have to sell it. But life goes on, and I've resigned myself to this garden, which is beautiful and tropical. And I can't grow a lot of the things from up north, but I don't really miss them because of the things I can grow down here. I cut back this rose. It's a knockout yellow, and it's coming back. It'll bloom again shortly, but it had just gotten too tall and scraggly. Oh, Miss Mimi is going crazy. She's running back and forth. Oh, the birds are bothering her. Knockout rose is doing well. This one is blooming over here. It gets slightly more sun in this area. Very fragrant, which I like about that. The satsumas are starting to turn color. I don't know if you can see the orange. The kumquats are starting to turn yellow as well. Kumquats should be ripe by Thanksgiving. I like to make a kumquat and cranberry sauce for Thanksgiving. Kumquats are edible all the way through. You basically pop them in your mouth and eat them. However, having said that, these have pits. So what I like to do is cut them in half at least, and pick the couple of seeds that may be present out. And then I throw them in my raw cranberries and make cranberry sauce, following the recipe for cranberry sauce on the bag. Let's see what's changed here. Oh, I got rid of my 2 white roses on a stick. I got tired of looking at scraggly roses on a stick. They were supposed to be a ball at the top. And I planted these tall sky pencil hollies in their place. I had that stake there so the daisy plant would stick up. Now that reminds me that my grandmother on my dad's side used to grow this. It'll come to me in a minute what the name of it is. I can't think of it right off the top of my head. But it's, I think I want to say, Black-Eyed Susan. That's right. Forsythia is something that grows up north. And I used to have forsythia hedges that I took from cuttings. It's very easy to propagate. Basically, if you take a green cutting in the spring when it sprouts, you cut the sprout off if it's about 6 inches or 12 inches tall, and just stick it in the ground. Keep the ground moist. Stick it in wet sand is your best bet. Or you could stick it in the ground if you have enough of them. And My luck up north was about, I'd say 80 to 85% of the sprouts would catch, of the cuttings would catch, which if you take 50, 60 cuttings is quite a lot. There's the other sky pencil holly. What I'm trying to do is mimic these two sky pencils. It gives you a little bit of tall structure in the garden because everything is kind of, I don't have a lot of in between. I have really low stuff and I have really high stuff, and I'm kind of looking for the in between stuff. Back in here, all is well. This, I'm very proud of this, although you wouldn't know it from where I planted it. But, and I'm making my way there carefully so I don't fall. This plant here, although it doesn't look like much right now, it was a group of 3 cuttings that I actually took from my grandmother's forsythia up north. And I rooted it first in water. I lost one of them, and I just planted it here to get it established. And probably in a year or two, I will dig it up and find a more prominent spot for it. Ultimately, I want to put it in the front of my bed so I can enjoy it, but I don't want to look at a little stub right now because I have enough little stubs of other things. So I'm nurturing it back there. Here all is well. Trying to think if there's anything noteworthy back here. Oh, there was one. I don't know if it's still here. One thing that is noteworthy, and that is, let me see if I can see it from here or give you a picture of it. Yes, well, you may not be able to see it, but up in there are a couple of blooms on my, or inflorescences on my Canary Island date palm. They're kind of inconspicuous. They normally get bigger than that. What alerted me to it while watering was the evidence of the little florets that fell to the ground. So if you pay attention, they brought my attention to the fact that it was blooming, even though the flowers are kind of inconspicuous up there. Ooh, I can smell the sweet smell of the tea olives that are on the other side of that fence. Orchids have done okay here. I can't say that they've grown hand over fist. However, there are some new leaves. This is a new leaf. This is new. The little one at the bottom is new. Of course, all the old is dead. But so I can't say as if I'm growing them, but they're not dying. I will put it that way. I can get orchids to not die. These orchids are ground orchids, and actually that's what's in my picture on my channel, are those ground orchids blooming. What I do is I put them out here for the summers, and all of that foliage is going to die back. And what I'll do then, it'll die back at the first frost. And then what I'll do is take them inside, and the heat will spur them on to send up new growth, and in that new growth is going to be blossoms. So usually around February-ish is when they'll bloom. My lady palm looks okay. The cutting, or the sprout that I took off, some of the bottom leaves are turning brown, but I remain ever hopeful that it might catch. This garden doesn't really ever change. I'm gonna have to, there's one little gap here. I cut back those leatherleaf ferns a little too hard. And what I'll have to do is dig up one of these that's coming up in my monkey grass and move a clump over there. Oh, there's Miss Mimi running around. I don't know if I caught her fast enough. Miss Mimi's wicked stepsister baby is sick this week. I was watching her from my neighbor, and she came over one day last week with a hole in her back. I didn't know what the hole was from. And so I took her to the vet, and she's recuperating. It turns out apparently she had an abscess that burst. And so she's inside my neighbor's house recuperating because the vet said to keep her inside for a while. Both Mimi and Baby are exactly the same age. They're 17, which is 84 in cat years. So they're old ladies. But Mimi, she's disappeared wherever she went. I was going to end with a picture of Mimi. But in any event, that concludes today's walk around. Oh, there she is. She's about ready to go in. She's had enough of out for today. Mimi, are you ready to go in? Huh? Yeah? Okay. Okay then, have a good day. Bye-bye. See you next week.